Hey folks, Chris here. Today it's a special video. It's a special day because we're going to talk about my favorite, by far, my favorite three lenses by Fujifilm. These are the 23mm, the 50mm and the 56mm. And I'm going to tell you all about it right after the intro. Stay tuned. So you probably noticed that I included the 50mm and the 56, but I did not include the 23 and the 23 f1.4, only the 23 f2. And there's a good reason for that. As you might know, I shoot a lot of weddings. This is my favorite style of photography, and weddings tend to be a little bit tricky, be it in terms of light, in terms of speed, in terms of weight, and obviously in terms of being there at the right time, at the right moment, and get the perfect shot. So my usual setup is to have two X-T2 bodies on each side with a Peak Design strap and to have two lenses attached to them. That is a way for me to be able to swap between two focal lengths, that is the 23 and the 50 or the 56mm. Those are the two focal lengths that I always have with me during a wedding. So in terms of lenses, here's the deal. During a wedding, you want to carry as little weight as possible, at least during the day when you have to run around and you have to... I personally take photos that are usually very candid, that are not posed, are not expected by the clients, by the guests, by anyone. I just go around, do my thing, nobody sees me, nobody knows I'm there, and I get the best shots that way. By the way, that is a reason why I ditched the battery grips for my two X-T2s. I don't use those anymore because I'm trying to be as small packaged as I can. So having the 23mm and the 50mm, these two little guys here, they're actually very compact, and these are great. The 23 is something I use a lot for group shots. I use it a lot for the ceremony. I use it a lot for the reception. If I want to get, larger groups of people and I don't want to have to back off 150 meters, I use this guy. And the good thing is that you don't need to be necessarily wide open. You can, like group shots, usually I shoot them at f5.6, which is a very sharp point for this particular lens. Sometimes I open a little bit wider if I need to have a shallower depth of field, but otherwise f2 is plenty for what I need. This guy here, the 50mm, same thing. I open it at f2 normally during a wedding, and that is basically what you need in order to get that good bokeh, that shallow depth of field. f2 is plenty during the day. You don't need more than that necessarily. And also, while we're at it, these two provide weather resistance, which is a good plus. I take a little break to remind you to subscribe if you didn't do it yet. Like and share, that helps me a lot, thanks. Now when you get to the evening hall, the lights usually are very dim. Therefore, that extra stop of light that you get with the 56 f1.2 for closer portraits is actually excellent, because that allows you to not use a flash, which I never do, because I want to keep it candid and not let people know that I'm taking photos of them as much as possible. And it allows you also to go a little bit closer to the person. You gain 6mm of focal length. It's not a lot, but it's still something. And that is actually great because that gives you an extra stop of light and you don't have to increase the ISO as much. And the shutter speed can also be fast enough to not have any blurry shots during the dinner. I did get asked many times to compare the 50mm with the 56mm, but funny enough, the 35, which I sold some time ago, is closer to the 50mm than the 56. Not by a lot, but it's still closer in terms of focal length. Now, the autofocus improvements of the 50mm and the 23mm make a whole lot of difference for everyday life and for weddings when you need the autofocus to be quick. Now in terms of aesthetics, the 50mm is actually very pleasing with the little hood. See here, makes the camera look very retro, very old school, very almost analog looking, which is kind of what we're going for with Fuji. That's one of the things I like the most, but this one particularly is very small and it's very pleasing and unobtrusive. So when you're on a shooting day, or even if you're just shooting normal photos in the park with your son, or if you're shooting, I don't know, any other type of scenario, this looks actually very pleasing. So here are a few shots that compare the 56mm with the 50mm, so you can see how the depth of field compare when they're wide open. So now the question is, which lens should you get, the 56 or the 50mm? And my answer is, depends on what you need it for. If your main concern is to have a quick, very responsive, and very precise autofocus, I would definitely go with the 50mm. If you're also looking for a lightweight, compact, small, and weather-resistant lens, obviously the 56 is going to give you a better result. On the other hand, if you're looking for a lens that gives you a shallower depth of field, gives you that extra stop of light, and that's something you're looking for your photos, for example for weddings, I would definitely go with the 56mm. Now I hear a lot that the 50mm is way faster in terms of autofocus, and it's true, but until I heard about that specific point of autofocus, I never had a problem with my 56mm f1.2. This lens served me very well. I did a lot of weddings with it, and honestly, I'm gonna keep using this lens for my weddings, hands down. The 23mm is my favorite lens for street photography and for pretty much everyday life, for weddings, as I explained earlier, and for the same reasons as the 50mm, and the improvements over the 23 f1.4, as I mentioned previously, for the 50mm. By now, we're all expecting the 50mm f1, which should be released this year, hopefully, which is the best of both worlds. You have a wider aperture and you have a faster autofocus. So they're basically mixing these two together, keeping this focal length, but in terms of autofocus, in terms of aperture, they're kind of mixing them up together. But there's one thing you need to keep in mind, is that it's just under 1 kilo. Taking a lens with you that is under 1 kilo, if you take a body such as the X-T2, that becomes quite some weight to bring around. So that's something to keep in mind. If you want something compact and light, just ditch that extra stop of light and go with the 50mm f2. So that is my take. Do you guys own one of these lenses? Do you own more than one? Which one is your favorite lens? What style of photography do you guys shoot with it? I'm curious to know. Let me know in the comment section below. See you in my next video, and like always, take care.